Okay, so you've got Python, Pandas, Pickle, datetime, everything is all up and running. Let me just remove this. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to start to build the framework or the skeleton of the data file that we're going to then populate with the experimental data as it's being generated. What I like to do at the start, however, is I like to clear the command prompt output, because as we're going to see, if we start to generate very large data files and we want to print them out just to see what's being generated, we're going to have a very overwhelming amount of data in our command prompt. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear the command prompt first. Okay, so every time we run the program, we want to basically clear the output. How do we do that? It's quite simple. It's a single line of code. Okay, so os.system, I want you to CLS if the name of the operating system is NT. So NT is for Windows. If it's not Windows or NT, so if you're running Mac or Linux, we're going to instead use clear. So if you run, if you are working off a Mac at the moment and you're in terminal, you know that you have to type clear to clear the terminal output. So if we run this, I'm about to sneeze. We'll run a debug here. All is working. Okay, we'll just give it a little bit of something to clear up. Okay, this should clear the screen and then print out all is working. There we go. So it's all working fine. Now, that will do it every time we run it. So what do we want to do now? Well, let's have a look at the data file that we want to make. We want to create a column for subjects, date, and then time. Okay, so let's do this now. So subject ID equals, now if you wanted to go ahead and create an input, what is this ID, or enter subject ID, then that's perfectly valid. Okay, you can use that. What we're going to do is we're just going to hard code this for now. And we're going to say it's always going to be me. Oops, I've hit the caps lock. Right, so subject ID. The second column was the date, wasn't it? So let's get the current date. And that's going to be date, time, dot today. We then want to convert this. We don't want all the muck that's coming out. We want to tell it the order that we want it in. So it's STFR. I think it's STFR. Let's have a look. Got it printed up here before. It is STRF. STRF. Okay, time. And we want, what is it? This is the current date. So we want it to be year. So year, month, and then date. The reason we do it this way is if we order by ascending number, if we don't do it using year, month, date, it's going to be in jumbled order. Whereas if you consider year first and then month and then date, you'll get it in ascending order or descending order when you do just a simple general sort. So we'll print this out, make sure that we're getting what we think we're getting. The current date is, and we'll cut date. We'll convert this into a string. Hopefully this works. If you haven't used datetime.today to get the date before, this is a very handy way of doing it. 19th of the 3rd. Yep, that's correct. Okay, we'll do the same thing now for the time, so we don't need that printed out. Current time. Well, actually, no, we should print that out just in case. Okay, so current time equals date time.today. We can do exactly the same thing. STRF time. So it's basically string format. And we want this to be now hours, minutes, seconds. Note the uppercase and the lowercase. All right, and then we will go print debug current time, and then we'll do a string conversion for current time. So hopefully this should work again. Should give us the current date and the current time, so it should be 3:08, and it is. Great. So we've got that all up and running. So we should be free to populate this later on. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. Nothing? Great. Good. So what we can do now, hey, let's start building our pandas file, our output data file. So we'll call it something like output file equals. Now we've imported pandas as PD, so we'll go PD dot, and this is going to be a data frame because we want 2 dimensions of data. Data frame. And then what we're going to do is basically create a dictionary, and we'll populate the various values within that dictionary. We're not going to use a series of, we're not going to concatenate anything or anything like that. We'll just do this manually in this way. There's many ways that we can do it. This is just one of the ways. The first thing that we want in the first column is going to be subject ID. And that will be, well, subject ID, what we've created up here. Okay. And then the next thing that we want, let's put this on the next line so it looks nice. We want, it was date, wasn't it? Date. Okay. And then the next thing is going to be the time of the experiment. And so then that will be current time. Okay, so there we go. We'll just put the first 3 columns in there just for now. And then let's print this out. So we just print out the output file. What we expect to see is the 2 debug statements. And then we should see something that says subject with the subject's initials underneath it, date with the date underneath it, and then time with the time underneath it. Okay, so let's just split this up. What we'll do is we will put a couple of new lines in, oops, just so we can see it visually. There we go. So here we go, subject, that's me, date, that's me, time, date, that's the date, time, that's the time. And we've got these 2 debug statements up here just to make sure that we're throwing in the correct values that we should. Okay, now Pandas has given us an ability now, this data frame has given us ability to identify data based on the column, because now we can just call the subject or the date or the time, because we know what we've called the headers now. But you see we've got this 0 here. Now, let's just double this. So we'll put 2 things in the list now. We should have subject, date, and time, but now we should have 2 entries for it. And you can see that here. We've gone the long way around to create this data frame, but I'm just trying to get the point across. See how we've got 0 here for the first row of data, and then we've got 1 here for essentially the second row of data. What Pandas also does is gives us an index into each row of data. Now, when we save that and convert it into a CSV file later on, we can turn that index on and off. We can say, hey, keep it out, or we can say, yep, leave it in there. By default, it's left in there. Okay, so this is not an error, this is just a feature. It's not an error, it's just a feature. It's just a feature of Pandas, okay, because we can then use location. We can then look into the data frame by using PD or output file.iloc or output file, so the data, the object dot columns or locations, okay. So as you might be able to see now that what we're going to do is essentially extend this now to contain what was the next one? Trial number. Trial number. That's going to be empty. We'll just leave it with a 0. Okay. And then we're going to have a reward orientation. We'll just leave that at 90, 90. Now you see that because I've got two things here, okay, so two items in that array, we're going to need to create the same number of items in the array as it goes through. Otherwise, Pandas has a bit of a problem with that. Okay, so if you just want to initialize it right at the start, just create the skeleton, just populate that with a single value in that array, particularly if you're going to pass immediately the subject initials in there. Okay, so we'll do foil ori here. Okay, and then the last thing is going to be what? The response. Okay, and let's just say they got them both right. Now, we have to put a reminder to ourselves that reminder correct equals 1 and equals 1, incorrect equals 0. Okay, so let's see what we get out of it. We should now see our full data skeleton come through, and it should have two various things there. So two rows of data, 2 rows and 7 columns. So it's given us a little summary. Now you see it's truncated in the command output. So this is just Pandas basically making it quite short and straight and to the point. Okay. So this is how we essentially start to create our data frame. We're using this way of initializing the data frame, and then what we're going to do is we're going to populate our data inside the main loop of our experiment. We're going to create the output file, we're then going to run the experiment, we're then going to push the data from the experiment into the output file, and then we're going to save that output file later on. This is just one way that you can do it. The other ways that I've done it before is I've created the skeleton and then I've opened up that file, read the file, changed the experiment, performed the experiment, updated the file, saved that file, and then got the next file, because I've done multiple subjects at once, each at different stages of their experiment. For now, we're just going to use this sort of template in making our CSV file. We haven't made the CSV file yet, we've just made the data frame. In the next video, we'll learn how to save the CSV file. All right, we'll leave this video here, and I'll see you in the next one. Best of luck, guys.